guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be repotting my 2 fiddle leaf figs. I'm actually going to be separating them. I bought them at Home Depot a couple months back and there's actually 2 trees in 1 container. So we decided to give it a little bit of time, and today is actually the first day of spring. They have been doing really well. They've each been putting off a lot of new leaves. So we decided today it was time to separate them and repot them in their own respective pots. So yeah, I'm going to show you guys how we're separating and repotting them. So this is the fiddle leaf fig tree that we are going to be separating and repotting today. As you can see, there's actually 2 trees in this one little container, and we actually got this fiddle leaf for like $18. So when you break it down, it's like $9 a tree, which is a crazy good deal. And if you see those brown spots underneath the leaves, that's just because we actually had a spider mite problem, and as we clean them off with alcohol, unfortunately we actually left the alcohol on the leaves for just a little too long, so it actually burnt the leaves. The fiddle leaf itself is actually still doing just fine. It's still healthy and putting out new leaves, just unfortunately it has those ugly burns, which made me feel so bad when it happened. So to repot it, we will be using this Miracle-Gro cactus, palm and citrus garden soil. We accidentally bought a outdoor garden soil bag. It looks just like the indoor one, except this one was larger, so we thought we were getting a good deal. If you want to use this to repot your fiddle leaf figs, definitely look for the indoor one. Luckily, we will be mixing it with some indoor cactus soil that we had as well, so it should work out just fine. It's just really meant for the outdoor plants, and so it is a little heavier and retains moisture a little more, we find. But again, since we're mixing it in with some soil we already have, it should be just fine. And as you saw in that clip before, we have 2 large plastic nursery pots that we will be putting these in. We just use nursery pots because they're cheap and they have really good drainage, and then we'll be purchasing some really pretty planters to sit them in and make them actually look pretty. If you are trying to repot your plants, definitely get something that has really good drainage. That's why we like the nursery pots. They already have the holes in them, and again, they're cheap. If you want to use something like a terracotta pot, that works great too because it actually pulls the moisture out of the soil. Just make sure whatever you have either has drainage holes or is something that you can drill holes in yourself. Fiddle leaves do not like keeping wet. They don't like their soil to retain too much moisture, and that's actually another reason that we're using the cactus soil. I actually use indoor cactus soil for most of my plants because it has that aeration. It's much more loose and it's going to dry out quicker, which again is very helpful regarding pests and bugs. Any kind of moisture in the soil is going to attract bugs, and again, you don't want your plants to get too waterlogged because then that will cause some root rot. So I think the cactus soil works really well for many different types of plants, but again, any type of looser soil that allows for some aeration should be great for this plant, and you can make your own soil as well by mixing soil with compost and bark or perlite, or really whatever works for you, and it may take some trial and error, but again, as long as it's something that can drain really well, then it should be just fine. So now you can see Skylar has the fiddle leaf fig over a container, and he's just working to loosen up the soil and try to get the roots clear so we can separate them. Another way to do this is to use a water hose and just put it on a low pressure mode and wash away the soil. That way you can see the roots. We decided not to do that for this, but you can. It works really well. And you can just see how he's loosening the soil up and trying to expose the roots. So here Skylar is finally separating the two trees. The more soil you get out, the easier it's going to be to determine which roots belong to which tree. And I'm really glad that we started doing this when we did, because I thought the roots were going to be much more established than they were. So it was actually not too difficult to separate them. So I would say, you know, try not to, if you do have multiples on a pot, try not to leave them in there for too long. I have separated other plants where the roots were just completely entangled in one another, and that can cause some real damage to each tree once the roots are so much larger and established. So it's a really good thing we decided to separate it when we did, because the roots still are not nearly as big as I was expecting they would be. So we have separated them and put them each in their own respective pot. And now Skylar is just mixing that dry indoor soil with that outdoor soil and trying to just dry that up. And then we have our diatomaceous earth, which is super useful for taking care of any pests that may be in there, whether it's eggs or young bugs. This just basically works to, it actually grinds up any bugs that are in there. It's safe to have around your house. It's safe to have around your pets. It doesn't do any harm to your plants, and so we try to use it in all of our indoor soil, just because we have struggled with things like fungus gnats before, and we found it really does help keep those populations down. So now Skylar is just adding soil to that nursery pot, and we usually put it about 1/3 or so of the way in and leave plenty of room for the plant and the roots. This part is really helpful if you do have 2 people, but you can do it with 1 person as well. I am just helping hold the tree in the middle and keeping it stabilized as Skylar puts the soil on top. And now once you have filled the soil to the top, you just want to pat that in really nice so you can get everything pushed down tightly so the plant is very stable and there's no way that it's going to be leaning or falling over. And then we're just adding a little more of that garden soil. We did not realize that we needed to use more. And again, guys, remember that when you do this, please buy the indoor soil. Again, the outdoor soil is very heavy, and luckily, you know, we had that extra soil to mix in with it, but just don't make that mistake, because it may end up too waterlogged if you don't have any other dry soil that you can mix with it. So just real quick, I also wanted to go over some good practices when caring for your fiddle leaf fig. I know a lot of people seem to have problems to know when they need to be watering it. I always water my fiddle leaf figs when the top 2 inches of soil are dry, and I just do that using the finger test. I just put my finger in there, and if soil is sticking to my finger, then I'm going to leave it alone. But if it starts falling off, then I can tell that it needs a good watering. And I just water until water is coming out of the drainage holes in the bottom of the pot, and you either let the water sit in the base tray before dumping it off, or since my plants are so small, I just take them into the shower and give them a good watering that way. I also make sure my fiddle leaf figs get plenty of humidity by misting them each morning, and they absolutely love bright indirect light, so I keep mine a few feet away from a southern facing window, and I can tell that they're happy because they have been putting out so much new growth. And just remember to keep rotating them occasionally so each part of the plant is getting ample sunlight, and to keep them from growing lopsidedly. And fertilize in the spring and summer about every other watering so your fiddle leaf fig gets all the nutrients it needs. And thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful for you. And I can't wait to see you next time.